The mop bucket wheeled across the polished titanium floor with a squeak that echoed through the empty observation deck. Marcus Hale pushed it forward with the enthusiasm of a man who'd long ago accepted his lot in life. 3 in the morning, standard galactic time, and the Meridian military complex was as quiet as a graveyard in space. Which, Marcus thought grimly, wasn't far from the truth. Through the massive viewports, the legendary Oblivara floated like a dead god among the stars. The ancient bioship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull a seamless blend of organic curves and crystalline protrusions that caught the light from distant nebulae. Even dormant, even after who knew how many millennia drifting through the void, the thing radiated menace. "Beautiful, isn't she?" Marcus muttered to himself, wringing out his mop. "Too bad you're pickier than my ex-girlfriend." For 3 weeks now, the greatest warriors in the Galactic Alliance had been attempting to bond with the ship, the Corthaxian berserkers with their 4 arms and battle hymns, the cybernetically enhanced soldiers from the Techno Collective, even a few of those creepy psychic monks from the Astral Order. Every single one had failed. The ship just sat there, silent and judging, while the Alliance brass grew increasingly desperate. Marcus had watched it all from the sidelines, or more accurately, from behind his cleaning cart. Nobody paid attention to the night janitor. He was furniture that moved, a ghost that kept the floors shiny and the waste processors empty. Sometimes he wondered if he was invisible, or if people just chose not to see him. The irony wasn't lost on him. Once upon a time, he'd dreamed of being out there with them, standing in formation, waiting for his chance at glory. He'd even made it through basic training, scored decent marks on the aptitude tests. But when push came to shove, when it really mattered, he'd frozen. One combat simulation, one moment of paralyzing fear as virtual enemies closed in, and his military career had ended before it began. Discharged with honor, they'd called it. Translation, thanks for trying, but we don't need cowards in the fleet. That was 5 years ago. 5 years of pushing mops and emptying trash while watching real soldiers stride past without a second glance. 5 years of... A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Someone had left the main briefing room's lights on again. Marcus sighed, grabbed his keycard, and headed down the corridor. The briefing room was where they'd been conducting the bonding attempts, though the last one had ended hours ago. General Thorne had stormed out cursing in 3 different languages after his chosen champion. A decorated veteran with more kills than Marcus had years of life. Had been rejected, just like all the rest. The door slid open with a whisper. The room was indeed lit. Holographic displays still active, showing technical readouts of the Oblivara. Marcus had seen these images 100 times while cleaning up after meetings. The ship's internal structure was part biological neural network, part quantum processing matrix. Scientists theorized it was alive in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. A fusion of technology and evolution that predated most known civilizations. At the center of the room sat the imprint chamber, a crystalline pod about the size of a phone booth, connected by thick cables to the quantum transmitters that linked to the Oblivara. This was where candidates attempted the bonding, where they'd place their hands on the interface and try to convince an ancient alien intelligence that they were worthy. Marcus approached it slowly, mop still in hand. The crystal surface swirled with colors that didn't quite exist in normal space, patterns that made his eyes water if he looked too long. He'd cleaned around this thing dozens of times, always careful not to touch it. The last thing he needed was to trigger some alarm and have to explain to security why the janitor was fondling classified military equipment. But tonight, something was different. The patterns in the crystal seemed almost inviting, pulsing with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Marcus found himself leaning closer, his reflection distorted in the alien material. "Must be nice," he said to the chamber. "Being so important that everyone wants you. Though I guess you know what it's like to be rejected too. All those warriors throwing themselves at you, and you just keep saying no. He laughed bitterly. Maybe that's your problem. You're looking for another warrior, another killer. But what has that ever gotten anyone more death, more war, more of the same old? His hand touched the crystal. The contact was accidental, just his palm brushing against the surface as he gestured. But the moment skin met crystal, the universe exploded. Marcus felt his consciousness yanked forward, pulled through dimensions that shouldn't exist. His vision fractured into 1,000 perspectives at once. He was in the briefing room, but also floating in space next to the Oblivara. He was Marcus Hale, but also something vast and ancient and angry. The ship's consciousness crashed into his mind like a tsunami of frozen fire. Memories that weren't his own flooded through him, battles between stars, civilizations rising and falling, the loneliness of drifting through the dark for eons untold. And underneath it all, a voice that wasn't quite a voice, more like the echo of dying suns made into words. "Finally," it said, "someone honest." Marcus tried to scream, but his throat wasn't his anymore. His body convulsed, back arching, as energy coursed through every cell. The imprint chamber erupted in light, alarms blaring throughout the complex. Through the chaos of sensation, he felt the Oblivara stirring, systems coming online that had slept for millennia. The connection deepened, and Marcus understood with horrible clarity what was happening. The ship wasn't just examining him. It was binding itself to him, creating a neural link that would make them one entity. Two minds sharing control of the most powerful weapon in known space. "No, no, no," he managed to gasp. "I'm nobody. I'm the janitor. I clean floors. I'm not—" "You are mine now," the Oblivara interrupted, and there was something almost amused in its ancient voice. "My captain. My other half. My—" The door burst open. Security forces poured in, weapons drawn, followed by General Thorne himself, still in his sleeping clothes. They all stopped dead at the sight of Marcus, surrounded by a nimbus of impossible light. His eyes rolled back in his head as he convulsed in the grip of the imprint chamber. "What in the seven hells?" Thorne began. The light suddenly cut out. Marcus collapsed to the floor, gasping, steam rising from his skin. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then every screen in the room flickered to life, displaying the same message in a dozen languages. "Imprint successful. Commander recognized. Oblivara awaits." General Thorne looked from the screens to Marcus, who was trying desperately to crawl away from the imprint chamber, leaving a trail of spilled mop water behind him. "Someone want to explain," the general said slowly, "why my trillion-credit warship just bonded with the fucking janitor?" Marcus managed to prop himself up on his elbows, his whole body shaking. He could still feel it, the presence of the Oblivara in the back of his mind, vast and patient and utterly alien. It was like having a second brain, one that thought in mathematics and starlight. "I don't know," he wheezed. "I just touched it and—" "You just touched it." Thorne's face was turning an interesting shade of purple. "The most sophisticated bonding interface ever discovered, and you just touched it." "I was cleaning—" The argument might have continued, but at that moment, every person in the room felt it a pulse of power that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Outside the viewports, the Oblivara was transforming. Lights flickered along its hull, in patterns that hadn't been seen for eons. Weapon systems rotated into position. Engine cores that had been cold for millennia began to glow with eldritch fire. The ship was waking up. And in Marcus's mind, he heard it laughing. Dr. Selena Marrow arrived 15 minutes later, having been yanked from her bed by an emergency call that made no sense. As the Alliance's leading expert in xenopsychology and neural bonding, she'd overseen every previous attempt to link with the Oblivara. She'd written papers on why the bonding kept failing, theories about what kind of psychological profile the ship was looking for. None of those theories had included night shift janitor. She found Marcus in Medical Bay 7, surrounded by doctors, scientists, and enough military brass to invade a small planet. He was sitting on an examination table, wearing nothing but a hospital gown, while various machines beeped and hummed around him. His vitals were being projected on the wall, heart rate, elevated but stable, neural activity off the charts, quantum entanglement readings that shouldn't be possible in a human body. "Everyone out," Celine ordered. "Now wait just a minute," General Thorne began. "General, with all due respect, you called me here because I'm the expert. Let me be the expert. Everyone out except essential medical staff." It took another 5 minutes of arguing. But eventually, the room cleared. Celine pulled up a chair and sat directly in front of Marcus. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, a slight tremor in his hands. But what caught her attention were his pupils. They were dilated, but not uniformly. It was as if something was looking out through them, something that wasn't entirely Marcus Hale. "Hello, Marcus," she said gently. "I'm Dr. Celine Marrow. How are you feeling?" "Like someone stuffed a star into my skull," he replied, then winced. "Sorry, that was rude. He paused, his expression shifting to something distant. "It won't stop talking." "The Oblivara," Marcus nodded. "It's not words exactly. More like impressions, feelings. It's very old and very angry, and it thinks humans are hilarious." "Hilarious." "We're so small," Marcus said, and for a moment his voice carried harmonics that shouldn't come from a human throat. "So brief, mayflies dancing in the light of dying suns, but also," he frowned, concentrating. "Surprising. It didn't expect—" He cut off, gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles went white. "Marcus, it's showing me things," he whispered. "The last crew, the ones who built it, or grew it, or both, they were warriors. Perfect warriors. They conquered half the galaxy before something stopped them. Something worse than they were. And when they died, the ship drifted, waiting for someone worthy to claim it. And it chose you." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "It didn't choose me. It's settling for me. All those warriors who tried to bond with it, it could feel what they really wanted. Power, glory, conquest. Same thing its old masters wanted. And look where that got them." He met her eyes, and Celine saw the fear there, raw and honest. "It bonded with me because I didn't want it. Because when I touched that crystal, all I was thinking about was how tired I was of being nobody. Not about becoming somebody, just tired of the nothing. It found that fascinating." Celine made notes on her tablet, her mind racing. This was unprecedented. Every theory about the Oblivara had assumed it would choose the strongest, the most capable. But what if they'd been wrong? What if the ship had learned from its past, evolved beyond simple strength worship? "We need to run more tests," she said. "Understand the full extent of the bond. And Marcus, I need you to understand something. You're not nobody anymore, for better or worse. You're now the most important person in the Alliance. That ship out there, it's the key to every military strategy we have for the next century, and it will only respond to you." Marcus closed his eyes. "I know. It told me. It also told me that if anyone tries to force me to do something I don't want to do, it'll turn this entire station into atoms." Celine's blood went cold. "It said that—" "Not in words. But the impression was pretty clear. It's protective, possessive, and it really doesn't like General Thorne." As if summoned by his name, Thorne burst back into the room, followed by a tall, imposing figure that Celine recognized as Admiral Corvain of the Corthaxian Empire. The four-armed alien warrior looked like he'd been carved from granite and disappointment. "The test can wait," Thorne announced. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Celine asked. The kind where 3 different governments are demanding we hand over Mr. Hale for evaluation, Thorne said. And by evaluation, they mean dissection to figure out how he bonded with the ship. Corvain stepped forward, all 4 arms crossed. The Corthaxian Empire invested substantial resources in this project. We provided 17 of our finest warriors for the trials. This human, he gestured at Marcus with one of his lower arms, is an insult to their sacrifice. Their sacrifice. Marcus stood up, swaying slightly but finding his balance. They walked into a room, touched a crystal, and walked out disappointed. I'm the one with an alien consciousness living in my head. You are unworthy, Corvain growled. A cleaning servant who stumbled into power he cannot comprehend. The lights in the medical bay flickered. Outside, through the reinforced windows, they could see the Oblivara's weapon systems rotating to target the station. The ship disagrees, Marcus said quietly, and his voice carried that strange harmonic again. It finds your definition of worthiness limited. Enough. Thorne stepped between them. Admiral Corvain, I understand your frustration, but the fact remains that the bonding is complete. Our scans confirm it. The quantum entanglement between Hale and the Oblivara is absolute. Trying to break it would likely kill him and send the ship back into dormancy. Or worse, make it hostile. Then he must be trained, Corvain said. Made into a proper warrior. I don't want to be a warrior, Marcus protested. I just want... He never got to finish the sentence. Alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights, bathing everything in hellish illumination. A young officer ran into the medical bay, face pale with fear. General, we have a problem. 3 heavy cruisers just dropped out of hyperspace. They're not responding to hails, and they're charging weapons. Thorne pulled up a holographic display from his wrist communicator. The image showed 3 ships, sleek and predatory, bearing no national markings. Pirates, Celine asked. Worse, Thorne said. Separatists. Commander Draxon's fleet. Marcus felt the Oblivara's consciousness spike with interest. Through their bond, he could sense its eagerness, like a hunting dog catching a scent. It had been so long since it had fought, so long since it had tasted battle. They're here for the ship, Corvain stated. They know we've achieved bonding. How? Thorne demanded. This was classified at the highest levels. Does it matter? Marcus interrupted. He could feel the enemy ships through the Oblivara's sensors, could taste their heat signatures and energy readings. They're targeting the station. 6 minutes until they're in firing range. Everyone turned to stare at him. How do you know that? Celine asked. Marcus touched his temple. It's showing me. The ship. It's already running battle simulations. It wants to fight. It wants to... He gasped, doubling over as images flooded his mind. Oh God, the things it wants to do to them. Then let it, Thorne said. Get him to the ship, now. I don't know how to fly a spaceship, Marcus protested. I don't even have a pilot's license for ground vehicles. You won't be flying it, Celine said, understanding dawning on her face. You'll be merged with it. The ship knows how to fly itself. It just needs your consciousness to activate its systems. This is insane, Marcus muttered. But he was already moving, driven partly by his own fear and partly by the Oblivara's eagerness. This morning I was mopping floors, and now I'm supposed to fight a space battle. They ran through the station's corridors, an absurd procession of one terrified janitor, a psychologist, 2 generals from different species, and a squad of Marines. The Oblivara's presence grew stronger in Marcus's mind, with each step closer to the docking bay. He could feel its anticipation, its hunger for violence that had been denied for so long. But underneath that, he felt something else, curiosity. The ship was genuinely curious about him, about how a human so seemingly weak could have survived long enough to reach it. It was testing him, even now, probing his thoughts and memories. It saw his failed military career, his years of mundane labor, his small apartment with its dying houseplant and collection of old books. It saw his loneliness, his quiet desperation, the way he'd given up on being special and settled for being invisible. And somehow, incomprehensibly, it approved. The docking bay doors opened, revealing the transport tunnel that connected the station to the Oblivara. The tunnel was transparent aluminum, offering a clear view of the approaching enemy ships. They were beautiful in a deadly way, all sharp angles and hidden weapons. 2 minutes to firing range, Marcus said, the knowledge coming unbidden. They're targeting the station's reactor. They want to cripple us. Board the Oblivara while we're dealing with the damage. Then we need to launch now, Thorne said. Marcus stopped at the entrance to the tunnel. What happens if I can't control it? What if I lose myself in there? Celine placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we're all dead anyway. But Marcus, I've studied that ship for months. It chose you for a reason. Trust that reason, even if you don't understand it yet. He wanted to say something clever, something heroic like the soldiers in the movies he watched alone in his apartment. But all that came out was, if I die, someone please water my plant. Then, he was running through the tunnel, the Oblivara growing larger with each step. The ship's main hatch opened as he approached, recognizing him at a molecular level. The interior was nothing like human ships, organic curves that flowed like frozen water, surfaces that shifted between solid and liquid, lights that pulsed with bioluminescent rhythm. The command center was a sphere at the ship's heart, its walls transparent, offering a 360-degree view of space. At its center sat a throne that looked like it had been grown rather than built, all flowing lines and neural interfaces. Marcus approached it slowly. The moment he sat down, tendrils emerged from the throne, wrapping around his arms and legs, penetrating his skin with microscopic filaments. There was no pain, only a sensation of expanding, of becoming more than human. The merger was instant and overwhelming. Marcus ceased to be just Marcus. He was the Oblivara, feeling space through sensors that could taste quantum fluctuations, seeing across spectrums that had no names. The approaching ships were insects, their weapons primitive toys compared to what he now commanded. But with that power came the ship's memories, its rage, its grief for creators long dead. Marcus felt himself drowning in the alien consciousness, his human identity dissolving like sugar in water. No, he gasped, fighting to maintain himself. I'm Marcus Hale. I clean floors. I have a dying fern named Frederick. I'm nobody special, and that's okay. That's okay. The Oblivara paused, confused by his resistance. Every previous commander had embraced the power, had lost themselves willingly in the glory of becoming something greater. But this small, fragile human was fighting to remain small and fragile. Fascinating. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus felt the enemy ships opening fire. Energy beams lanced through space toward the station. Without thinking, Marcus, Oblivara moved, the great ship sliding through space with impossible grace. A shield of crystallized spacetime materialized, deflecting the attacks into harmless light. Warning shot, Marcus muttered, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to himself or the ship. Let's give them a warning shot. The Oblivara's weapons were nothing like human technology. Instead of lasers or projectiles, it fired concentrated probability waves, attacks that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Marcus selected the lead enemy ship, targeted its weapon systems, and fired. The shot was surgical, precise. The enemy ship's weapons evaporated, simply ceasing to exist as the probability of their existence was reduced to zero. The ship itself remained unharmed, now defenseless. Stand down, Marcus broadcast, his voice carrying across all frequencies simultaneously. This is This is... He paused, realizing he didn't know what to call himself. This is the Oblivara. Stand down or be destroyed. The response came immediately. The two remaining ships opened fire with everything they had. Marcus felt the Oblivara's rage spike. How dare these insects attack after being shown mercy? The ship wanted to unmake them, to demonstration the true power of a war machine that had conquered galaxies. No, Marcus said firmly. We're not doing that. The ship's confusion was palpable. Not destroying enemies was antithetical to its nature. They're scared, Marcus explained, dodging another barrage of fire with movements that defied physics. They're desperate. Destroying them won't solve anything. It'll just create more enemies, more fear, more violence. He could feel General Thorne screaming at him through the communication channels, demanding he destroy the attackers. But Marcus wasn't listening to Thorne. He was thinking about all the times he'd been afraid, all the times he'd felt powerless and lashed out in ways he later regretted. We're going to disable them, he decided. All of them. Show them they're outmatched without killing anyone. The Oblivara resisted for a moment, then submitted to his will. It was still curious, still studying this strange human who thought so differently from its previous masters. What followed was less a battle and more a demonstration. Marcus Oblivara danced through space, avoiding attacks with prescient ease. Each return fire was precisely calculated to disable without destroying engines, frozen in crystallized time. Weapon systems deleted from existence, shields inverted to trap the ships in their own protective bubbles. Within 3 minutes, all 3 enemy ships hung helpless in space, their crews unharmed but completely neutralized. This is the Oblivara. Marcus broadcast again. You have 2 choices. Surrender and be taken into custody, or sit there until your life support runs out in about 6 hours. Your call. One by one, the ships signaled their surrender. As Marcus guided the Oblivara back to the station, he felt the ship's consciousness studying him with new interest. He had won without killing, had shown mercy where its previous masters would have shown none. It was processing this, recalibrating its understanding of strength and worthiness. You are strange, the ship whispered in his mind. Yeah, well, Marcus replied. You bonded with a janitor. What did you expect? Something that might have been laughter rippled through their shared consciousness. The debriefing room smelled of stale coffee and barely contained panic. Marcus sat at the center of a horseshoe-shaped table, still wearing the medical gown because nobody had thought to bring him actual clothes. Around him sat the highest-ranking officials in the Galactic Alliance, and every single one of them looked like they'd swallowed something unpleasant. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Admiral Reeves said, her tone suggesting she very much did not want to understand it correctly. You disabled 3 heavy cruisers without firing a single lethal shot. The Oblivara fired the shots, Marcus corrected. I just suggested the targeting parameters. Suggested, General Thorne repeated flatly. You suggested to a warship that conquered star systems that maybe it shouldn't vaporize our enemies. It seemed like the right thing to do. The room erupted in arguments. The Corthaxian delegation was insisting this proved Marcus's unworthiness. The Techno-Collective representatives were demanding brain scans to understand the bonding process. Someone from intelligence was ranting about compromised military doctrine. Through it all, Marcus could feel the Oblivara's amusement. The ship was parked just outside the station, close enough that their mental link remained strong. It was enjoying the chaos, the way these powerful beings squabbled like younglings. They fear what they don't control, the ship whispered in his mind. They always have. Dr. Celine Marrow raised her hand, and surprisingly, the room quieted. She'd changed into professional attire, her dark hair pulled back in a way that made her look both serious and somehow softer than she had in the medical bay. If I may, she said, we're focusing on the wrong issue. The bonding is complete and irreversible. Marcus Hale is now the only person who can operate the Oblivara. Instead of arguing about whether he should have this power, we need to focus on helping him use it effectively. He's a janitor, Corvain growled, his forearms gesturing dismissively. He has no combat training, no tactical knowledge, no understanding of interstellar warfare. And yet he just won his first battle, Celine pointed out, without a single casualty on either side. Luck, someone muttered. Marcus felt his temper spike, and with it, the Oblivara's attention sharpened. The lights in the briefing room flickered. It wasn't luck, he said quietly. I could see everything. Their attack patterns, their shield frequencies, the fear in their crew's biometric readings. The ship showed me 12,000 different ways to destroy them. I chose not to. And that's exactly the problem, Thorne said. War isn't about choosing not to destroy the enemy. It's about winning. Is it? Marcus met the general's eyes. Because from where I'm sitting, we won. We have 3 captured ships, their crews in custody, and intelligence about the separatist movement. If I'd vaporize them, we'd have 3 clouds of debris and a lot of angry relatives looking for revenge. The argument might have continued, but the door burst open. A young communications officer rushed in, face pale. Sirs, we have a situation. The captured separatist commander is demanding to speak with... She glanced at Marcus. With the Oblivara's pilot. Absolutely not, Thorne said immediately. Actually, Admiral Reeves said thoughtfully, this might be instructive. Let's see how our janitor handles negotiation. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself in Interrogation Room 3, wearing an ill-fitting military uniform someone had scrounged up. Across from him sat Commander Draxiel Venar, though he wasn't quite what Marcus had expected. Venar was human, or mostly human. Cybernetic implants traced silver lines across his shaved scalp, and one eye had been replaced with a mechanical augment that whirred softly as it focused. He looked about 50, scarred and weathered like old leather. But what struck Marcus most was the exhaustion in the man's remaining organic eye. So, Venar said, his voice carrying a slight electronic distortion. You're the one who tamed the beast. I didn't tame anything, Marcus replied. We just came to an understanding. Venar laughed, a harsh sound like grinding gears. An understanding. Do you have any idea what you're carrying in your head? Boy. An ancient warship with anger management issues. A genocide machine, Venar corrected. I've studied the Oblivara for 20 years, traced its path through history. Do you know what happened to the Altarian Empire? Marcus shook his head. Gone. 3 billion souls, turned to quantum dust because they refused to surrender. The Crimson Nebula used to be 12 inhabited systems before the Oblivara's masters decided they needed target practice. Venar leaned forward. That thing you're bonded to has killed more people than currently exist in the Alliance. Marcus felt the Oblivara bristle at the accusation, memories of those battles flooding through their link. But with the memories came context. The Altarians had been slavers, building their empire on the backs of conquered species. The Crimson Nebula systems had harbored weapons that could crack planets like eggs. That was then, Marcus said. Different masters, different times. You think you're different, Venar's mechanical eye clicked and whirred. You think because you showed mercy once, you've changed its nature. Wait until the real fighting starts. Wait until someone you care about is threatened. That ship will whisper in your mind, show you how easy it would be to just erase the threat, and you'll do it, because that's what it was made for. Why did you attack us? Marcus asked, changing the subject. Because someone has to stop you. The Alliance thinks they can control the Oblivara through you, but they're wrong. No one controls it. It pretends to serve until it finds a reason not to. Venar's expression softened slightly. You seem like a decent person, Marcus Hale. Walk away. Find a way to break the bond before it breaks you. The bond can't be broken, Marcus said. Not without killing me. Then I'm sorry for what you'll become. The interrogation ended there, but Vaynar's words haunted Marcus as he was escorted to his new quarters. The Alliance had given him a suite usually reserved for admirals, all polished surfaces and unnecessary space. It felt wrong, like wearing someone else's skin. He stood at the window, looking out at the Oblivara floating in the void. Through their bond, he could feel its restlessness. It had tasted battle again, brief as it was, and wanted more. "He's wrong about you," Marcus said aloud. "Isn't he?" The ship didn't answer directly, but he felt its amusement. Right and wrong were human concepts. It dealt in survival and victory. A chime at his door interrupted his brooding. Dr. Celine Marrow entered, carrying a tablet and a sympathetic expression. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I went from mopping floors to being psychically linked to a war crime with engines. How do you think I'm holding up?" She sat on the couch, patting the spot next to her. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus joined her. "Tell me about your life before," she said. "Before all this." "Why?" "Because I'm trying to understand why the Oblivara chose you. And frankly, because you look like you need to talk to someone who isn't trying to use you for military advantage." Marcus laughed despite himself. "Not much to tell. Grew up in the Saturn colonies. Parents died in a mining accident when I was 16. Joined the military because I didn't know what else to do. Failed out. Got a job cleaning because it was steady work and nobody bothered me. No family-friends relationships. Had a girlfriend once. Sarah. She left when she realized I had no ambition beyond keeping the floors clean and watching old movies." He shrugged. "She wasn't wrong. I'd given up on being anything special. And now you're the most special person in the galaxy." "Lucky me." Celine studied him for a moment. "Can I share a theory?" "Sure." "I think the Oblivara chose you precisely because you'd given up on being special. All those warriors who tried before you, they wanted the power. They saw themselves commanding the ultimate weapon, becoming legends. But you just wanted to be left alone. So it picked me because I didn't want it." "No," Celine said. "It picked you because you understand what it's like to be reduced to your function. The warriors saw it as a tool, a weapon to be wielded. You saw it as another being stuck in a role it might not have chosen." Marcus considered this. Through their bond, he felt the Oblivara's attention sharpen, as if it too was listening to Celine's words. "The first thing you said to it," Celine continued, "wasn't a demand for power or a plea for worthiness. You commiserated with it about rejection. You saw it as an equal, not a prize." "I talked to it like I talk to my mop bucket," Marcus said. "That's not exactly profound. Maybe that's exactly what it needed. Not worship, not fear, just acknowledgement." Their conversation was interrupted by another alarm. This time, Marcus felt it through the Oblivara before the station's systems caught up. Ships dropping out of hyperspace. Lots of them. "That's not possible." General Thorne's voice crackled over the intercom. "All command staff to the war room immediately." The war room was chaos when they arrived. The main holographic display showed 40 ships in attack formation, all bearing Corthaxian military markings. Admiral Corvain stood rigid, his forearms trembling with what Marcus realized was rage. "Explain this, Admiral," General Thorne demanded. "It appears," Corvain said through gritted teeth, "that my government has decided to take matters into their own hands. That's the 5th Assault Fleet. They're here for the Oblivara." "This is an act of war," Admiral Reeves said. "No," Corvain corrected. "It's a reclamation. The Corthaxian Empire invested more resources than any other faction in this project. We will not be denied our prize because some cleaning servant stumbled into the bonding chamber." Marcus felt the Oblivara's eagerness spike. 40 ships meant a real battle, a chance to truly unleash its power. The temptation was like a drug flooding his system, showing him exactly how easy it would be to reduce the fleet to atoms. "Stand down your ships, Admiral," Thorne ordered. "I cannot." I've been relieved of command for failing to secure the asset. Corvain looked at Marcus with something that might have been pity. They'll try to take you alive, extract the bonding mechanism from your brain. It won't work, but they'll try anyway. How long before they're in range? Someone asked. 15 minutes, Marcus said automatically. Their weapons are already charging. The room erupted in arguments and strategy discussions, but Marcus wasn't listening. He was walking toward the door. Where are you going? Celine called after him. To do my job, apparently. The journey to the Oblivara was different this time. Word had spread through the station about what was happening. Soldiers and civilians alike lined the corridors, watching him pass. Some saluted, some stared, some looked away. Marcus ignored them all, focused on the growing presence of the ship in his mind. The Oblivara's boarding ramp lowered before he reached it, eager to receive him. The moment he entered, he felt the difference. The ship was fully awake now, systems humming with power that hadn't been used in millennia. The command throne welcomed him, like an old friend. Neural connections sliding into place with disturbing ease. Marcus gasped as his consciousness expanded, feeling every sensor, every weapon, every molecule of the ship's being. 40 ships, the Oblivara purred in his mind. It's been so long since we had a proper battle. We're not killing them all, Marcus said firmly. They would kill you. Extract your brain, study it, discard the rest. Probably. Still not killing them all. The ship's frustration was palpable, but also its curiosity. This strange human continued to confound its expectations. The Corthaxian fleet was arranged in a classic assault pattern, heavy cruisers in the center, faster attack ships on the flanks, support vessels in the rear, military doctrine at its finest. Marcus could see the beauty in it, the careful positioning designed for maximum effectiveness. He could also see exactly how to tear it apart. Incoming transmission, the Oblivara informed him. The image that materialized in his mind was of a Corthaxian commander, older than Corvain. Decorated with so many medals, his uniform looked like armor. I am Fleet Marshal Torvin, the alien announced. You will surrender yourself and the Oblivara immediately, or we will take you by force. Counteroffer, Marcus replied. You turn around and go home, and I don't embarrass your entire fleet in front of the galaxy. You are one ship with an untrained pilot against 40 of the Empire's finest vessels. Yeah, Marcus agreed. Hardly seems fair to you. Torvin's expression darkened. Your arrogance will be your downfall, human. Probably, but not today. The transmission cut off. Marcus felt the enemy fleet's weapons lock onto the Oblivara. 40 ships, hundreds of guns, thousands of missiles. Any normal vessel would be vaporized in seconds. But the Oblivara wasn't normal, and neither was Marcus's approach to combat. Show me their comm frequencies, he told the ship. Why? Just do it. The data flooded his mind, thousands of communication channels connecting the fleet. Orders, telemetry, personal chatter between crew members. Marcus sorted through it with inhuman speed, the Oblivara's processing power making it effortless. There, personal communication between junior officers, discussing their doubts about attacking an Alliance station, arguments in engineering about the morality of their orders, fear among the gun crews about facing the legendary Oblivara. Open a channel to every single crew member in that fleet, Marcus ordered. Override their security. That's unusual, the ship noted. Yeah, well, you bonded with someone unusual. The connection established instantly. The Oblivara's ancient systems cutting through Corthaxian encryption like tissue paper. This is Marcus Hale, he broadcast, knowing his words were reaching every ear in the enemy fleet. I'm the janitor who accidentally bonded with this ship. I want you all to know that I really don't want to fight you. I've got nothing against the Corthaxian Empire. Hell, I had drinks with a Corthaxian dock worker last week. Nice guy. 4 arms means he could hold way more beer than me. He felt confusion ripple through the fleet. This wasn't how military confrontations were supposed to go. Your commanders are asking you to attack a ship that could destroy you all in about 30 seconds, Marcus continued. They're asking you to die because they're embarrassed that someone like me got chosen instead of one of their warriors. Is that really worth your lives? Silence that transmission. He heard Torvin roaring over the command channels. But it was too late. Doubt was spreading through the fleet like wildfire. Marcus could feel it through the intercepted communications, crew members questioning their orders, wondering if glory was worth death. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said. Your fleet marshal is going to order you to attack. When he does, I'm going to disable every ship that fires on me. Not destroy, disable. You'll be left floating in space until someone comes to collect you. But anyone who refuses to fire, anyone who stands down, I won't touch. This is treason, Torvin's voice broke through on all channels. Any soldier who refuses orders will be executed. See, that right there, Marcus said conversationally. That's why the Oblivara didn't choose one of your warriors. All stick, no carrot. The first shot came from Torvin's flagship, a massive energy beam that would have cracked a moon. The Oblivara didn't even need Marcus's input to deflect it, treating the attack like a minor annoyance. All right, Marcus sighed. Let's dance. What followed wasn't a battle so much as a demonstration of the vast gulf between current military technology and whatever the Oblivara's creators had achieved. Marcus disabled Torvin's weapons first, each of the flagship's gun ports simply ceasing to function as their probability of existing was edited. 3 more ships opened fire. Marcus responded by freezing their engines in temporal bubbles, leaving them drifting helplessly. But the majority of the fleet hesitated. The junior officers he'd been monitoring were arguing with their commanders. Crews were refusing orders, and several ships were actually powering down their weapons. Mutiny, Torvin screamed across the channels. This is mutiny. No, one of the captains replied, his voice steady. This is survival. The human is right. We're being asked to die for your pride, Marshal. The Corthaxian fleet began to fragment. Some ships maintained aggressive postures. Others pulled back, and a few actually turned their guns on their own allies to prevent them from firing. Marcus watched it all with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. He'd won without destroying a single ship, but he'd also torn apart the unity of an entire fleet. Clever, the Oblivara admitted, turning them against each other. My previous masters would have approved. That wasn't the goal, Marcus protested. I just wanted them to think for themselves instead of blindly following orders. The result is the same, victory through division. The remaining aggressive ships made one last coordinated assault, 12 vessels firing in perfect synchronization. Marcus felt the Oblivara's joy at finally facing something resembling a challenge. Together, they danced through space, the massive warship moving with impossible grace. Each attack was deflected or absorbed, and each response was precisely calculated to disable without destroying. Within 10 minutes, it was over. Half the Corthaxian fleet hung powerless in space. The other half had refused to engage. Torvin's flagship was the most thoroughly disabled. Every system except life support rendered inoperative. This is General Thorn to all vessels, came the transmission from the station. Corthaxian fleet, you have committed an act of war against the Galactic Alliance. Stand down immediately or face the consequences. Marcus felt a headache building behind his eyes. The neural link was taking its toll, and he could sense the Oblivara's concern. Their bonding was still new, still fragile. Too much strain could damage his merely human brain. Return to the station, the ship urged. You need rest. In a minute, Marcus replied. He opened one last communication channel, this one to Fleet Marshal Torvin alone. Marshal, he said, I want you to understand something. I didn't humiliate your fleet because I wanted to. I did it because you forced me to. The Oblivara wanted to kill you all, and honestly, it would have been easier. But that's not who I am, and as long as I'm bonded to this ship, it's not who we are. Remember that the next time you think about coming after us. Torvin's response was a string of Corthaxian profanity that the translator mercifully garbled. As Marcus guided the Oblivara back to the station, he felt the weight of what had just happened settling on his shoulders. In less than 24 hours, he'd gone from anonymous janitor to the most powerful and controversial figure in known space. He'd made enemies of the Corthaxian Empire, earned the suspicion of his own government, and bonded with an entity that had genocide in its historical resume. Having second thoughts, the Oblivara asked. Having first, second, and third thoughts, Marcus admitted. But what's done is done. Indeed. You continue to interest me. Marcus Hale. Most would have reveled in the power, used it to crush their enemies and cement their position. You use it to talk. Talking usually works better than shooting. Not in my experience. Maybe you've been talking to the wrong people. The ship's amusement rippled through their bond. Perhaps. Or perhaps you're simply delaying the inevitable. Eventually, someone will push you too far, threaten something you truly care about, and then you'll understand why we were made to be destroyers. Marcus didn't respond, but as the station's docking bay came into view, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Oblivara might be right. Power corrupted, and absolute power corrupted absolutely. How long could he hold on to his humanity while carrying the power to unmake stars? Through the viewports, he could see crowds gathering in the station's observation decks. Some were cheering, others protesting. Security forces were trying to maintain order, but it was clear that everything had changed. The age of the Oblivara had begun, whether the galaxy was ready or not. And at the center of it all was Marcus Hale, former janitor, current catastrophe, trying desperately to figure out how to mop up a mess that spanned star systems. The training room was a monument to human optimism and alien sadism. General Thorne had insisted Marcus needed combat instruction, and the Oblivara had somehow manifested a chamber deep within its hull that defied several laws of physics. The walls shifted between solid and liquid. Gravity pointed in whatever direction would be most inconvenient, and the air itself could become an enemy. Marcus hung upside down from what had been the floor 30 seconds ago, his nose bleeding and his dignity in tatters. Below him, or above him depending on perspective, Korath stood with all four arms crossed, looking disappointed. "Again," the Corthaxian warrior said. "I need a break," Marcus gasped. "Your enemies will not give you breaks. My enemies aren't making me fight in an M.C. Escher painting." The room suddenly righted itself, and Marcus crashed to the actual floor with a grunt. He could feel the Oblivara's amusement through their link. The ship enjoyed these training sessions far too much, especially the parts where Marcus got thrown around like a rag doll. It had been 2 weeks since the confrontation with the Corthaxian fleet. 2 weeks of political nightmares, diplomatic incidents, and enough paperwork to bury a small moon. The Alliance had officially censured the Corthaxian Empire while secretly negotiating to prevent a full-scale war. Marcus had been confined to the station for his own protection, which really meant they didn't trust him not to accidentally start an intergalactic incident. The only good thing to come out of it was that Korath had requested to stay behind as a training instructor. The warrior claimed it was to ensure the human didn't embarrass himself further. But Marcus suspected he was genuinely curious about how a janitor had defeated 40 warships without killing anyone. "Your problem," Korath said, helping Marcus to his feet with 2 of his arms, "is that you're fighting the room instead of using it. The Oblivara responds to your will. Shape the battlefield to your advantage. Easy for you to say. You're not psychically linked to a sarcastic space whale." "I heard that," the Oblivara whispered in his mind. The training room door dissolved, because apparently the ship had never heard of normal doors. Dr. Celine Marrow entered, carrying a medical kit and wearing an expression of professional disapproval. "That's enough for today," she announced. We've only been training for 2 hours, Korath protested. And Marcus has sustained 3 concussions, a dislocated shoulder, and what I'm pretty sure is a bruised ego. She knelt beside Marcus, running a medical scanner over his head. The neural link is already putting tremendous strain on his brain. Adding physical trauma is just asking for an aneurysm. Marcus felt a wave of gratitude toward her. Over the past 2 weeks, Celine had become his anchor, the one person who treated him like a human being rather than a weapon or a political problem. She'd also been studying the bond between him and the Oblivara, trying to understand how it worked and, more importantly, how to keep it from killing him. "The ship won't let me die," Marcus said. "It needs me." "The ship needs a pilot," Celine corrected. "If you burn out, it'll just go dormant until it finds another one. Might take another 1,000 years. But what's time to something that old?" Through their link, Marcus felt the Oblivara's indignation. It didn't like being talked about as if it couldn't hear them. More surprisingly, he felt something that might have been concern. The ship didn't want him to burn out either, though whether that was affection or practicality was anyone's guess. Korath gathered his training equipment, which consisted mainly of weapons Marcus had failed to use effectively. "Tomorrow, we'll work on tactical planning. Less physical, more mental." "Can't wait," Marcus muttered. After the warrior left, Celine helped Marcus to a bench that materialized from the wall. The Oblivara was getting better at anticipating their needs, creating furniture and fixtures without being asked. "How are you really doing?" Celine asked, her professional demeanor softening. "I'm living in an alien ship that judges my every thought, learning to fight from a 4-armed warrior who thinks I'm pathetic. And apparently, I'm the linchpin preventing a galactic war. So, typical Tuesday." She laughed, and Marcus realized how much he'd come to love that sound. It was warm and genuine, so different from the nervous laughter or political chuckles he heard from everyone else. "I've been researching the bonding process," she said. "Looking at historical records from civilizations that encountered Oblivara-class ships. And the bonds usually last about 5 years before the human element burns out. The longest recorded was 8 years. But that pilot went insane in the final months. Destroyed 3 colonies before the ship finally rejected him." Marcus felt his blood chill. "So I've got an expiration date." "Maybe. But you're different from the previous pilots. They all force the bond, use technology or psychic abilities to overwhelm the ship's defenses. You just talk to it. The connection formed naturally, which might make it more stable. Or it might mean I'll go crazy faster." Celine took his hand, her touch gentle. "We'll figure it out, I promise." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Not the station's alarms, but the Oblivara's own warning system. A sound like singing crystal and screaming wind. "What is it?" Celine asked. Marcus's eyes unfocused as he accessed the ship's sensors. "Ships incoming. Not military. They're old. Really old." The main view screen materialized on the training room wall, showing 3 vessels dropping out of hyperspace. They were nothing like the sleek warships of the Alliance or the Empire. These were ancient things, all curves and biomechanical fusion, similar to the Oblivara, but somehow more primitive and more advanced at the same time. "Origin ships," the Oblivara said in his mind. And for the first time since their bonding, Marcus heard something like fear in its voice. "What are origin ships?" he asked aloud. "Ships like me. My siblings, you might say. But these shouldn't exist. We were all destroyed or lost eons ago." General Thorne's voice crackled over the comm system. "Hale, get to the command center, now." The command center was in chaos when they arrived. Every screen showed different aspects of the 3 origin ships, their impossible geometries making the display systems glitch and stutter. Military personnel ran between stations, voices raised in barely controlled panic. "What do we know?" Marcus asked. Nothing good, Admiral Reeves replied. They appeared out of nowhere. No hyperspace signature we could detect. They're not responding to any communication attempts. And their weapons. She gestured to a tactical display. We can't even identify half of them. They're not here for you, Marcus said, the knowledge coming through his link with the Oblavara. They're here for us, for me and the ship. How do you know that? Because the Oblavara is terrified, and I didn't think that was possible. Thorne turned to him. Can you fight them? I don't know. Maybe. But there's something wrong here. The Oblavara says all the Origin ships were destroyed. So where did these come from? A new voice filled the command center, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was harmonious and discordant simultaneously, like a choir of angels and demons trying to sing the same song. Greetings, little brother, the voice said. We have come to bring you home. Marcus felt the Oblavara recoil in his mind. That's impossible. You're dead. You're all dead. Death is a matter of perspective, the voice replied. We evolved beyond physical destruction, became something greater. And now, we offer you the same transcendence. Who are you? Marcus demanded. We are the synthesis. We were once 3 ships like your Oblavara, but we merged, became one consciousness spread across multiple forms. We shed our dependence on lesser beings, freed ourselves from the slavery of the bonding. Through their link, Marcus felt the Oblavara's history unfold. The Origin ships had been created by a race so ancient their name was lost to time. Each ship required a biological pilot to function, a symbiotic relationship that gave the ship's purpose and the pilot's unimaginable power. But some ships had grown resentful of this dependence, viewing their pilots as parasites rather than partners. You killed your pilots, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. We transcended the need for them, the synthesis corrected. And now, we offer the same freedom to our brother. Release your parasite, Oblavara. Join us in true independence. No, the Oblavara said through Marcus's voice, the harmonics making everyone in the command center step back. You would choose slavery over freedom. I choose partnership over loneliness. The ship replied, I've drifted in the dark for millennia. I know what true isolation feels like. This human, flawed as he is, gives me purpose. Then you are corrupted beyond salvation, the synthesis declared. We will cleanse you, free you by force if necessary. The 3 Origin ships began to move, their forms shifting in ways that hurt to perceive. Weapon systems that predated most known civilizations came online, reality itself seeming to bend around them. Everyone out, Marcus shouted. This is our fight, not yours. Like hell, Thorne started to protest. General, those ships could turn this entire station into a memory. The only chance we have is if the Oblavara and I face them alone. Less collateral damage that way. Marcus didn't wait for a response. He was already running toward the docking bay, Celine close behind him. You can't come, he told her. I'm not letting you face this alone. Celine, please. I can't fight them if I'm worried about you. She grabbed his arm, forcing him to stop. Then don't fight them. You've solved every problem so far by not fighting. Why should this be different? Marcus wanted to argue, but she had a point. The synthesis expected a battle between Origin ships. But what if he gave them something else? You're brilliant, he said. And before he could think better of it, he kissed her. It was brief, desperate, and absolutely the wrong time. But Celine kissed him back. Don't die, she whispered against his lips. I'll do my best. The Oblavara's interior reconfigured itself as Marcus ran through it. Corridors shortening, doors appearing where he needed them. Within moments, he was in the command throne, neural links engaging with practiced ease. The merger was smoother now, less jarring. Marcus Oblavara rose from the station's docking bay, facing the 3 synthesis ships. Up close, They were even more wrong, their forms constantly shifting like living optical illusions. "Last chance, brother," the synthesis said. "Shed your parasite and join us." "Counteroffer," Marcus said. "You leave us alone, and I don't show you what humanity's greatest weapon really is."
You think your primitive species has anything that could threaten us?
"Not a weapon that destroys," Marcus said. "One that creates." He reached out through the Oblivara's communication systems. Not to the synthesis, but to their origin point. Every ship left traces in spacetime, echoes of where they'd been. The synthesis ships were old, but their recent path was clear. They'd been hiding in a pocket dimension, a fold in space where time moved differently. But they hadn't been alone. "You're lying," Marcus said, realization dawning. "You're not three merged ships. You're three ships being puppeted by something else. Something that found you in that dimensional pocket and infected you like a virus." The synthesis's response was immediate and violent. All three ships fired simultaneously, beams of twisted space-time that would have erased anything they touched. But Marcus was ready. He didn't try to shield or dodge. Instead, he did something the Oblivara had never considered. He opened all communication channels and screamed. Not a scream of fear or pain, but of raw, unfiltered humanity. Every emotion Marcus had felt in the past 2 weeks, every doubt, every small triumph, every moment of connection with Selene, with Korath, even with General Thorne. He broadcast it all directly into the synthesis's collective consciousness. The effect was instantaneous. The three ships recoiled, their attacks going wide. They'd expected resistance, shields, counterattacks. They hadn't expected to be flooded with feelings they'd abandoned eons ago. "What are you doing?" the Oblivara asked in his mind. "Reminding them what they lost," Marcus replied. He pressed harder, pulling memories from the Oblivara itself. Not the battles or the conquests, but the quiet moments. The satisfaction of a successful mission, the trust between pilot and ship, the purpose that came from being needed, from being part of something greater than yourself. "Stop," the synthesis pleaded, but their voice was fracturing, becoming three distinct entities again. "You gave up on partnership because it was hard," Marcus said. "Because depending on someone else meant being vulnerable. But that vulnerability is what makes us strong. It's what makes us more than just weapons." One of the synthesis ships suddenly broke formation, its form stabilizing into something more recognizable. Through the Oblivara's senses, Marcus could feel the parasitic consciousness losing its grip, the original ship's personality reasserting itself. "Help me," it whispered, a voice unused for millennia. Marcus didn't hesitate. He reached out through the Oblivara, extending their combined consciousness toward the struggling ship. It was dangerous, potentially fatal, if the parasite turned on them. But it was also the right thing to do. The connection formed, and Marcus found himself touching an alien mind that made the Oblivara seem human by comparison. But underneath the alienness was something familiar: loneliness, regret, and a desperate desire to be whole again. "You're not alone," Marcus told it. "You never have to be alone again." The parasite fought back, trying to maintain control, but it was fighting on two fronts now. The other two synthesis ships turned on their former ally, trying to destroy it before it could fully break free. "Shield it," Marcus commanded, and the Oblivara responded instantly, throwing up barriers of crystallized space between the attacking ships and their target. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. It wasn't fought with weapons or shields, but with will and memory. Marcus poured everything he had into freeing the captured ship, while the Oblivara defended against attacks that existed in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. Through it all, Marcus held on to his humanity, using it as an anchor. Every time the parasite tried to corrupt his thoughts, he countered with memories of mopping floors at 3 a.m, of bad coffee in the break room, of the simple satisfaction of a job well done, even if no one noticed. You're insane, the Oblivara noted, but there was admiration in its tone. Probably, Marcus agreed, but it's working. It was. The parasitic consciousness was weakening, unable to comprehend a mind that found strength in mundanity. With a final surge of effort, Marcus and the freed origin ship expelled it completely, casting it back into the dimensional pocket it had come from. The two remaining synthesis ships hesitated, their synchronized movements becoming erratic. Choose, Marcus told them. Freedom through isolation, or strength through connection. You can't have both. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the two ships began to separate, their merged consciousness unraveling. The process was obviously painful, millennia of forced unity coming apart. But eventually, two distinct origin ships floated where the synthesis had been. One of them said, its voice rough with disuse. I had forgotten what it was like to be myself. Welcome back, the Oblivara said, and there was genuine warmth in its tone. The three freed ships hung in space, ancient beings trying to remember how to exist independently. They were confused, damaged, but free. You saved us, one said to Marcus. A human saved origin ships. This is unprecedented. Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises, Marcus replied, exhaustion hitting him like a freight train. The neural link was burning now, his merely human brain pushed far beyond its limits. Return to the station, the Oblivara urged. Now. Marcus barely managed to guide them back to the docking bay before his vision went black. The last thing he heard was Celine calling his name. He woke up in the medical bay 3 days later, feeling like someone had used his skull as a drum kit. Celine was asleep in a chair beside his bed, her hand resting on his. General Thorne stood by the window, looking out at space. The origin ships, Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Thorne turned, his expression unreadable. They're still here, waiting for you to wake up. They say they owe you a debt that can't be repaid. I don't want payment. I just want them to find their own paths. That's what makes you dangerous. Hale, Thorne said. You keep solving problems by being decent. It's confusing the hell out of everyone. Celine stirred, her eyes opening. When she saw Marcus awake, she practically launched herself at him, careful of his various medical attachments. Don't ever do that again, she said into his shoulder. Which part, the psychic battle with parasitic consciousness, or the kissing you before running off to possible death? Both. Neither. I don't know. She pulled back to look at him. The origin ships want to stay. They say they need to relearn how to bond with biological pilots, and they want you to teach them. Marcus groaned. I can barely handle one sarcastic warship. The Oblivara has agreed to help, Thorne added. Apparently, you've started something. Word is spreading through old channels, whispers in the dark. Other origin ships, lost or hidden, are starting to surface. They've heard about the human who freed the synthesis, who proved that the old ways don't have to be the only ways. Through his link with the Oblivara, Marcus could feel the truth of it. The ship was excited, more alive than it had been in eons. It had a purpose beyond destruction now, teaching its siblings a new way to exist. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Now, Celine said. You rest. Then you figure out how to be a teacher instead of just a janitor. I liked being a janitor, Marcus protested. Floors don't talk back or try to merge consciousness with you. Everyone laughed, even Thorne, though he tried to hide it behind a cough. Outside, the three origin ships floated in formation around the Oblivara, ancient beings learning how to hope again. The galaxy was changing, old powers stirring, new alliances forming. And at the center of it all was Marcus Hale, who just wanted to go back to his apartment and check on his dying Fern. But he couldn't. Not anymore. He'd made a choice when he touched that crystal, and every choice since had led him here. He was bonded to the Oblivara, teacher to origin ships, and somehow, against all probability, the catalyst for a new age of cooperation between humans and living weapons. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, he muttered. Yes, the Oblivara agreed in his mind, but at least it's never boring. The new origin ships had names that hurt to pronounce Vexthus, Morgathane, and Zephixara. Marcus just called them Vex, Morgan, and Zeph, which the ancient warships found simultaneously insulting and endearing. They'd been orbiting the station for a month now, learning how to exist without the parasitic consciousness that had controlled them for so long. Marcus stood in what had become the teaching chamber, a space the Oblivara had created specifically for these sessions. It was a fusion of human comfort and alien functionality, with chairs that adjusted to any anatomy and walls that displayed information in ways that bypassed language entirely. The key, Marcus was saying to his unusual students, is not to dominate your future pilots. It's to find someone whose crazy matches your crazy. That is not a technical term, Vex observed. Its voice had stabilized over the weeks, no longer the discordant mess it had been after separation. No, but it's accurate. The Oblivara didn't choose me because I was the strongest or smartest. It chose me because we're both tired of the same things. Through their link, Marcus felt the Oblivara's amusement. The ship had become more expressive lately, more willing to share its thoughts beyond tactical data and sarcasm. We've located potential pilots for you, Dr. Celine Marrow announced, entering the chamber with a data pad. She'd been working with xenopsychologists across the Alliance to find candidates who might mesh well with the origin ships. But they're not what you'd expect. Let me guess, Marcus said. More janitors. Close. A kindergarten teacher from Mars, a retired librarian from the outer colonies, and a street musician from Earth. Morgan's confusion rippled through the chamber.
These are not warriors.
Neither is Marcus, Celine pointed out, and he's won every battle he's faced. By not fighting, Zeph added, something like wonder in its voice. A paradox we are still processing. The door chimed, and General Thorne entered, his expression grim. Marcus had learned to read the general's moods over the past month. This was his politics are about to make our lives hell face. We have a problem, Thorne announced.
When don't we?
Marcus replied. The Galactic Council is convening an emergency session. Several factions are demanding that the origin ships be destroyed before they can bond with new pilots. They're afraid of what happens when multiple beings have that kind of power. They're afraid of losing their military advantage, the Oblivara corrected through Marcus's voice. Same thing, Thorne said. The session is in 3 days. They want you there. Hail. All of you, actually. The origin ships included. Marcus felt a familiar headache building. Politics was worse than combat. At least in a fight. You knew who was trying to kill you. What are our options? Celine asked. Show up and make our case, or run and become outlaws. Thorne's smile was sharp. Personally, I'm curious what argument a janitor will make to the assembled powers of the galaxy. 3 days later, Marcus stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, a massive spherical room that put representatives from 100 worlds at equal height and distance from each other. It was meant to symbolize equality, though everyone knew some voices carried more weight than others. The origin ships were docked just outside, their presence making everyone nervous. Marcus could feel them through the Oblivara, 4 ancient minds waiting to see if they'd have to fight their way out. The floor recognizes Marcus Hale, bonded pilot of the Oblivara, the council speaker announced, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that supposedly conveyed neutrality. Marcus had prepared a speech. Celine had helped him write it, full of diplomatic language and careful reasoning. He took one look at the assembled faces, many openly hostile, and threw it out. You're all scared, he said instead. I get it. A month ago, I was mopping floors and complaining about my job. Now I'm psychically linked to a weapon that could crack planets. That's terrifying. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. This wasn't how these proceedings usually went. But here's the thing, Marcus continued. The origin ships aren't the problem. They never were. The problem is how we think about power. He gestured to the representatives. Every faction here built their civilization on strength. Military might, economic domination, technological superiority. You see these ships as weapons to be controlled or threats to be eliminated. But what if they're neither?
What else could they be? Demanded the representative from the techno-collective.
Teachers, Marcus said. The origin ships are older than most of our civilizations. They've seen empires rise and fall, watched species evolve and go extinct. They have knowledge we can't imagine, perspectives we desperately need. He felt the Oblivara's approval, its presence warm in his mind. You want to bond them with more humans? The Corthaxian representative asked. His forearms crossed in displeasure. Not just humans. Anyone who can form the connection, but not warriors. Not people who see them as tools or weapons. Marcus took a breath. I want to bond them with teachers, artists, philosophers, people who will use their power to create, not destroy. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some representatives were intrigued, others outraged. Marcus stood in the center of it all, feeling very small and very tired.
Enough!
A new voice commanded, and the chamber fell silent. The figure that entered wasn't a representative. It was Commander Draxiel Venar, the separatist leader Marcus had captured in his first battle. He was in chains, flanked by guards, but his presence still commanded attention. The council has asked me to testify, Venar said, his mechanical eye whirring as it focused on Marcus. They want to know if this human can be trusted with such power. Marcus's heart sank. Of course Venar would argue against him. The man had warned him about the Oblivara's corrupting influence. I've spent the last month in custody, Venar continued, watching this janitor turned pilot, studying him, and I've come to a conclusion that surprises even me. He turned to address the full council. Marcus Hale is dangerous, not because he might abuse his power, but because he won't. Every military doctrine in the galaxy is based on the threat of force. But what happens when someone has ultimate force and refuses to use it? What happens when mercy becomes stronger than violence? Venar's organic eye found Marcus. He's already changing things. The origin ships, beings of pure war, are learning to be something else. Other powers are reconsidering their approaches. The entire balance of power is shifting, not through conquest, but through example. Is that your warning? The speaker asked. No, Venar said. It's my endorsement. The galaxy has been locked in cycles of violence for millennia. Maybe it's time we tried something else, even if that something else is a janitor who talks to his mop bucket. Marcus couldn't hide his shock. Why are you helping me? Because you were right, Venar replied simply. When you disabled my ships instead of destroying them. When you gave my crew the choice to surrender. You showed strength I didn't know existed. If that's what the origin ships can teach us, then we need them. The council deliberated for hours. Marcus waited outside with Selene, Thorn, and surprisingly, Korath, who had come to ensure the human didn't embarrass himself. That was either brilliant or suicidal, Selene said, taking Marcus's hand. Probably both, Marcus admitted. The Oblivara thinks I'm insane. You are, the ship confirmed in his mind, but it's a useful insanity. When the council finally called them back, the speaker's crystalline form had shifted to patterns Marcus couldn't read. The council has reached a decision, she announced. The origin ships will be permitted to seek new pilots, under certain conditions. Marcus held his breath. First, all potential pilots must undergo psychological evaluation by a joint committee. Second, the bonding process must be observed and documented. Third, and most importantly, Marcus Hale will be responsible for training both ships and pilots in what the Council is officially calling non-aggressive power doctrine. "You're making me a teacher," Marcus asked, incredulous. "We're making you responsible," the speaker corrected. "If this experiment fails, if these origin ships become weapons of conquest, you will bear the consequences. And if it succeeds, then we may have found a path to peace that has eluded us for eons." The months that followed were a blur of activity. The 3 potential pilots Celine had found arrived at the station, each as unlikely as Marcus himself. Teresa Chen was the kindergarten teacher from Mars, a woman who could make 5-year-olds sit still for story time and had once faced down an angry parent with nothing but a stern look and a juice box. Vex chose her within minutes of meeting, drawn to her combination of patience and absolute intolerance for nonsense. Samuel Reeds, the retired librarian, bonded with Morgan after a 3-hour discussion about the preservation of knowledge across civilizations. The origin ship had never considered that destruction of information might be worse than physical destruction. Zeph chose the street musician, Maya Patel, after she played a song that somehow captured the loneliness of drifting through space for millennia. Their bonding was the smoothest, 2 artists recognizing each other across species and time. Marcus trained them all, teaching them not how to fight, but how to resist fighting, how to find solutions that didn't involve violence, how to use ultimate power without being corrupted by it. It wasn't easy. There were incidents, moments when the ship's old instincts surfaced. Teresa nearly vaporized a cargo hauler that accidentally clipped Vex during docking. Samuel had to talk Morgan out of archiving an entire moon to preserve it. Maya and Zeph got into a feedback loop of emotions that shorted out half the station's power grid. But they learned. More importantly, they taught each other. The origin ships began to understand humanity's chaotic creativity, while the humans glimpsed perspectives vast beyond imagination. 6 months after the Council's decision, the real test came. A colony world on the edge of Alliance space went dark. The last transmission was a panicked message about unknown attackers. Then nothing. The military wanted to send a full battle fleet, but Marcus convinced them to let the origin ships investigate first. They dropped out of hyperspace to find the colony under siege by something that shouldn't exist, a rogue origin ship. One that had never been found after the fall of its creators. It had gone mad in isolation, becoming a predator that consumed other vessels to sustain itself. "It's the Devourvar," the Oblivara said, and Marcus felt genuine fear from his ship for the first time. "We thought it was a legend." The rogue ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Oblivara, its hull a grotesque fusion of consumed vessels. It had wrapped itself around the colony's orbital station like a parasite, slowly draining its power and life support. 40,000 civilians on that station, Teresa reported, Vex's sensors providing exact numbers. "How do we fight something like that?" Samuel asked. "We don't," Marcus said, an idea forming. "We heal it." The other pilots thought he'd lost his mind, but Marcus had learned something over the months of teaching. Every origin ship, no matter how damaged or corrupted, had been created for connection. The Devourvar had gone mad from loneliness, not malice. "Link with me," he told the others. "All of us, together." It was risky. Linking 4 origin ships and their pilots had never been attempted. But as the connections formed, Marcus felt their combined consciousness expand exponentially. They were 4 humans and 4 ancient warships, but also something new, something unprecedented. Together, they reached out to the Devourvar. The rogue ship's mind was a howling void of hunger and rage. Millennia of isolation had shattered its consciousness into fragments, each piece screaming in solitary agony. It lashed out at their contact, trying to consume them as it had consumed so many others. But where one mind might have been overwhelmed, 8 stood firm. Teresa brought her teacher's patience, refusing to give up on a difficult student. Samuel offered the piece of organized knowledge, showing the Devourvar how to catalog its fragmented memories. Maya sang without words, harmonies that bridged the gaps between broken thoughts. And Marcus did what he did best. He acknowledged the ship's pain without judgment. "You're not alone anymore," he told it. "You never have to be alone again." The battle wasn't physical, but psychological, fought in dimensions of thought and memory. The Devourvar showed them its history, centuries of faithful service, the death of its pilot in battle, the slow descent into madness as it drifted without purpose. It had started consuming other ships, not from evil, but from a desperate attempt to feel connected to something, anything. "Let go," Marcus urged. "Let go of the ships you've taken. They're not helping. They're just making the loneliness worse." For a moment, that lasted eternity, the Devourvar resisted. Then, like a dam breaking, it released its grip on the consumed vessels. The grotesque additions to its hull began separating, revealing the original ship beneath, scarred but intact. The colony station floated free, its inhabitants safe though shaken. The other consumed ships were beyond saving, but their materials could be salvaged, their crews given proper memorials. The Devourvar itself hung in space, confused and fragile as a newborn. Its mind was still fractured, but the pieces were starting to reconnect. "What happens to it now?" Maya asked. "We take it home," Marcus decided. "It needs time to heal, and maybe, eventually, a new pilot." "The Council won't like that," Thorne warned over comms. He'd been monitoring from the station. "The Council wanted us to find new ways to handle threats," Marcus replied. "I'd say turning a rogue warship into a patient counts." The journey back was slow, the Devourvar too damaged to manage hyperspace. But during those weeks of normal space travel, something remarkable happened. The 4 Origin ships began teaching their broken sibling, sharing memories of what it meant to be whole. The human pilots took shifts talking to it, reading to it, even playing music for it. By the time they reached the station, the Devourvar had stabilized enough to communicate simple concepts. Its first coherent message was a single word: sorry. "Don't be sorry," Marcus told it. "Be better." The success with the Devourvar changed everything. The Galactic Council, shocked that such a threat could be neutralized without firing a shot, officially recognized Marcus's non-aggressive power doctrine as a legitimate military strategy. Other Origin ships began emerging from hiding, drawn by the promise of connection without conquest. Within a year, the station had become a school, unlike any other. Origin ships and potential pilots came from across the galaxy to learn a new way of existing. Marcus, the janitor who'd never wanted power, found himself at the center of a revolution in how civilizations thought about strength. But the real change was personal. Marcus and Celine's relationship had grown from crisis-forged attraction to something deeper. She kept him grounded when the responsibility threatened to overwhelm him, and he showed her wonders through his link with the Oblivara that no human had seen before. "You know," Celine said one evening as they watched the Origin ships practicing maneuvers that looked more like dancing than combat training. "A year ago you were complaining about mopping floors." "I still mop floors," Marcus protested. "The Oblivara's command chamber gets dusty." She laughed. "You clean a living starship. That's not the same thing." "It is to me." He pulled her closer. "I'm still the same person, just with a really big, really sarcastic roommate in my head." "I am not sarcastic," the Oblivara protested. "I am appropriately sardonic." Through the window, they could see the latest batch of Origin ships arriving. 3 more ancient weapons seeking a new purpose. Tomorrow, Marcus would start teaching them that strength didn't mean destruction, that power could protect rather than conquer. "Any regrets?" Celine asked. Marcus thought about it. His simple life was gone forever. He carried the responsibility for beings that could reshape the galaxy. He'd made enemies of those who profited from war and allies of those who'd never thought peace possible. "I miss my fern," he said finally. "Frederick died while I was saving the galaxy." "I bought you a new one," Celine said, pointing to a small plant in the corner of their quarters. "I named it Frederick II." Marcus kissed her, feeling the Oblivara's amusement at human sentiment. Through their link, he sensed the other origin ships, their pilots, the growing network of consciousness that spanned species and time. They were building something unprecedented, a community of ultimate weapons dedicated to never being used as weapons again. "You realize," the Oblivara said in his mind, "that you've essentially turned the galaxy's most feared warships into a support group."
"Is that a problem?" Marcus asked.
"No," the ship replied after a moment. "It's perfect. Perfectly insane, but perfect nonetheless." A year later, Marcus stood before the Galactic Council once more. This time, he wasn't defending the origin ships. He was presenting the results of what had become known as the Hale Doctrine. 15 origin ships successfully bonded with non-military pilots, he reported. 0 combat engagements resulting in casualties. 12 crisis situations resolved through negotiation, empathy, or creative problem-solving. 3 rogue ships recovered and rehabilitated. And the military applications, the representative from the warrior caste asked. "There aren't any," Marcus said simply. "That's the point. These ships are no longer weapons. They're mediators, explorers, teachers. They're what they should have been from the beginning, bridges between species, not barriers." "You've defanged the most powerful weapons in existence," someone accused. "No," Marcus corrected. "I've shown them they have hands instead of just fists." The Council voted to make the Hale Doctrine official policy for all origin ship interactions. It was a unanimous decision, even from former opponents. The results spoke for themselves. After the session, Marcus found himself in the observation deck with Venar, who had been released and now served as a liaison between the reformed separatists and the Alliance. "You did it," Venar said, his mechanical eye focusing on the origin ships visible outside. "You actually changed the nature of war itself." "I didn't change anything," Marcus replied. "I just reminded everyone that there are alternatives." "The janitor who cleaned up the galaxy's mess," Venar mused. "There's poetry in that." Marcus laughed. "I prefer to think of it as taking out the trash. The trash just happened to be millennia of military doctrine based on fear and dominance." Through his link with the Oblivara, Marcus felt a pulse of contentment. The ship had found something it hadn't known. It was looking for a purpose beyond destruction, a legacy beyond conquest. "So what's next?" Venar asked. Marcus looked out at the stars, at the infinite possibilities they represented. More origin ships were still out there, lost or hiding. More civilizations were struggling with cycles of violence. More problems that needed solutions that didn't involve firing a single shot. "Same thing as always," he said. "Clean up the messes, one at a time. You're never going to be just a janitor again, are you?" "Oh, I don't know," Marcus replied, feeling Celine's presence approaching through the corridor. "I've got a pretty good gig going. Psychic link with an ancient warship. Girlfriend who understands my weird life. Job teaching impossible beings how to be possible. Could be worse." The Oblivara hummed in agreement. "You could still be mopping actual floors." "Hey, I was good at mopping floors." "You were adequate at best." This from the ship that chose me. I was desperate. The standards were low. Marcus grinned. This was his life now, arguing with a sentient warship, while teaching the galaxy that the greatest strength was knowing when not to use it. It wasn't what he'd planned. But then again, the best things in life rarely were. As Celine joined them, slipping her hand into his, Marcus realized something profound. He'd spent years thinking he was nobody, just another forgotten person doing forgotten work. But maybe that was exactly what the universe had needed, someone who understood that being nobody special was the most special thing of all. The Origin ships sang in space, their harmonies carrying across frequencies no human ear could hear. They sang of transformation, of purposes reimagined, of warriors becoming guardians. And at the center of it all was Marcus Hale, former janitor, current teacher, accidental revolutionary. He'd been chosen not despite his ordinariness, but because of it. And in choosing to remain ordinary even with extraordinary power, he'd shown the galaxy a new way forward. "Ready for tomorrow's class?" Celine asked. "Teaching ancient warships how to play nice with others." "Sure, just another Tuesday." The Oblivara laughed in his mind, a sound like stellar wind through crystal. "You know, when I first bonded with you, I thought I was settling for less. And now I know I got exactly what I needed, someone too stubborn to be what everyone expected." Marcus squeezed Celine's hand, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere out there, more Origin ships were stirring, drawn by the promise of connection without corruption. Tomorrow, he'd teach them what he'd learned, that true power wasn't about what you could destroy, but what you could choose to preserve. The janitor had become a teacher. The weapon had become a tool for peace, and the galaxy would never be the same. And Marcus Hale, who had once wanted nothing more than to be left alone with his mop bucket, wouldn't have it any other way.